live from the internet. It's ZNLive. That's right. And this week we have a fantastic guest, very interesting background and experience, Sahar Hashemi, and she has actually been the founder of Coffee Republic, also the author of 2 best-selling books on entrepreneurship. Anyone Can Do It, Startup Forever, and she's involved in a number of very interesting initiatives that we're going to talk about. I actually really enjoyed your books. I read Anyone Can Do It, and I thought it was a really nice and authentic and genuine story about entrepreneurship. And I thought Startup Forever is very practical and kind of giving people very clear insights. Now, you talk about how to bring this entrepreneurship culture and mindset to large organizations. That's been one of your focuses recently. Now, we work with big organizations as well as institutions like the European Commission. Now, how realistic is it to bring entrepreneurial mindset and culture to these organizations? I know you talk a lot about it, but have you seen it actually work?
Yeah, absolutely, Phil. And I think one of the biggest myths and misnomers is that we think entrepreneurial mindset is just for entrepreneurs starting up. That startup mindset is just something that only startups can do. For me, it's something that is so human, so easily accessible to everyone, and it's just through years, I suppose, of command and control. In a world of yesteryear where people didn't communicate so easily, we've just got into certain habits, working habits that are not in tune with the world we live in. And, those habits have become sort of calcified, I think, within the culture of organizations. So going back to startup habits is something that's accessible to every single organization, because these are completely human habits. We always forget, what is a corporation made of? It's made of humans. It's the same. It's just, it's no different. Just because it's a big company doesn't mean there's some hierarchy that is set up somewhere, like written in stone, buried under, tons of earth. It's not. It's just made up of humans. It's as fluid as a startup. There's absolutely no difference.
Right. And I totally agree with you. I think that, ultimately everyone can be entrepreneurial in these large organizations. But I feel that there's often a risk or a perception of risk. People in a large organization or in an institution feel, okay, if I just do what I'm supposed to, I'll be okay. If I take a risk, then I'm putting myself forward, I might fail, and I might be noticed. How do you answer that for people who know they have to do something, but they're pretty terrified of taking that risk and failing?
Yeah, well, I mean, Phil, my answer to that really is, risk is something that, again, we overplay as if sort of entrepreneurs in some way are gamblers. And, if you want to be entrepreneurial, you've got to love adventure, and you've got to be completely fearless, and you've got to love risk. Look at risk. I mean, every day we get up, leave the house, put our feet on the floor. It's a risk. Living is a risk. Everything we do is a risk. And so this idea that we sort of somehow want to avoid risk in corporations, again, is a habit that we become used to and has become sort of entrenched. And it's sort of almost that idea that I don't want to take a risk becomes a great excuse not to do anything. Our entire lives are with risk. And here we're not even talking about taking a risk. When I started the business, when entrepreneurs started a business, you never think of it as a big risk, because it's all about the small actions you take every day. This idea we have of people taking big leaps. No one ever takes a big leap. It's impossible to take a really big leap. You just take little leaps, and then you might look back and realize, actually, that was quite a seismic change in what you did. So this idea, I think we've got to remove this word risk even from corporate language. And it's just doing stuff every day, and just risk just puts too much on something. I started the business, I didn't open 100 coffee bars in one go. The same in a company. You want to try something, actually shouldn't do it nationwide, company-wide, countrywide, because you don't know if it's going to work. So you try things small. Again, there's the book Little Bets, which I love as well. I'll talk about book marketing. There's so much power in tiny steps. So I think if we focus on the small steps we can take every single day, what can we do a tiny bit this minute that we're putting off. Let's just make that phone call. Let's write that email. Let's meet that person. Let's do the first draft of what we want to do. Let's prototype the first design that we're thinking about. That takes the sting out of it. It takes the risk out of doing something.
Yeah, I love what you say. And for me, one of my favorite books on the topic is Atomic Habits, which talks about, these very small things that change by, taking those very small steps. And it's very true. And I think there are probably two things that we need to change in the minds of people, which is the notion of risk and the notion of failure. As an entrepreneur, you have to get used to failing a lot in small ways, because you're going to get it wrong with this initiative, that initiative. Now, I think in large organizations, sometimes you need to help change the language so that, you have a language that turns failure into experiment or into learning. And so people are being bolder.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I don't even like the word failure because, it's pretty subjective failure, right? Like, there's not a dictionary definition that is a failure. What you've just done, you have just failed. I mean, it's such a personal, so subjective, right? So I would just completely even take the word failure out of my dictionary at all, my vocabulary. And I see it as sort of trial and error. Who's saying to someone, you have failed? In this venture, you have failed. No, you learn, you do it. It's a sort of label. It's a language, I think. That again, big corporations that, people are hard on themselves. It's too risky. We don't want to fail. No, rubbish. And the whole point when you do it small, when you try things small, it even takes the sting out of failure, because a lot of people say, oh, well, I can't do that because it's going to cost us a lot of money. But actually, therefore, if you do it small, then it's not going to cost you a lot of money. So it takes the risk out of it as well. And the price you pay for learning for your experiment actually becomes lower as well. And honestly, if I think back to my life, it just my one instrument of anything I've ever done, the one, if I would say the one secret I have, is just doing something, doing anything every day towards it. The momentum of that, I just cannot stress how important it is and how much it takes fear away. Because when we talk about fear involves you doing nothing by definition, and almost sitting on the cliff edge and contemplating, what happens if I jump? What is it going to be? What's plan A? What's plan B? What happens if it doesn't work? And what that means is you're actually not busy doing something. You're navel gazing. You're contemplating. You're getting a helicopter view, and that's never been a good thing. I've never seen someone be able to sit around and see whether or not something's a good idea. You just have to do it and then see if it's good or not.
Yeah, you're so right. 15 years ago, I worked for a very large medical technology company. And at some point, the president thought it was a good idea to introduce a new motto. It was, failure is not an option. And we said, well, we're not sure that this is the right way to people motivate it. We said as a communication department that we would be worried that people would be, would freeze as a result and not try anything. And then we convinced him that was the only compromise he was willing to make, to change it into success is the only option. But we were not sure. It was even worse. But yeah, so that's what happens in big companies, that even words have such a big impact. And it's the way that people. Yeah.
It's the ultimate what they teach children now. With Carol Dweck and the growth mindset. It's like, when you're in that growth mindset rather than fixed mindset of, I'm now a leader and I can't afford to do something that doesn't going to work. And if you put yourself into that almost childlike growth mindset, then you're giving yourself the license to try everything. And actually the whole environment changes because everyone's having a lot of fun experimenting, trying things. It's just the whole energy changes. People turn up in a completely different way because that's how you bring excitement into an organization.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of growth mindset. I was actually just listening to a podcast interview, the TED interview on growth mindset. And this is something I've been actually telling my kids over and over again. It's kind of like, get yourself in that space where don't think about yourself as smart or stupid, but think about how you're learning, how you're progressing. And they're now actually 19 and 22. And, I think they're taking some of those things on board. Of course, it's always difficult to know which things that they're taking with them. But I'd like to ask you, because this is a conversation I have a lot with young people today in their 20s. The world around us is uncertain and kind of scary and changing all the time. If you want to embark on a more entrepreneurial journey, what should you do, and what do you think is the mindset that you should adopt to do that when you really have no experience? When it's right at the beginning. Actually, I guess to some degree, how you started.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, saying we have to adopt a certain mindset is sort of, that's not even enough, Philip. I think, if you set out, if you want something and you really want it, you sort of, you put the idea out there in your life. You're like, you're doing whatever you're doing, and you're like, actually, in the back of my mind, actually would love to do something. And you sort of almost, I don't kind of want to sound EBGB, but you put that out in the universe, that you want to do something. And then eventually these ideas come, to you the whole time. And then one idea will suddenly arrive, and you'll be like, oh, this is good. Or it could be something you're missing in your own life, something, that you can't find, or some someone close in your life has got an issue and they can't find the product they need. So however the light bulb comes to you, as soon as the light bulb comes to you, you don't think about it too much. You just basically act on it. You do something about it. You go and talk to someone. You go and talk to someone who knows about it. You don't ask advice. What I mean is, someone who knows about the industry. You start doing tiny bit of research. You try to put a business plan together. Just little teeny micro actions every day about that idea. That's what I would advise. But just put it out there. I've had a new project that I know we're going to talk about. That's a project that I've been wanting to do something in this field for a very long time. And I've had, bad versions of it. I've decided not to do it. And then suddenly this kind of almost light bulb sort of came to me, and it comes to you eventually. And so that's what I believe. You put the idea out there, you've got your little recording light on, you're getting the little details. And then just in one moment, you'll find you and the idea will come together perfectly. And I believe in that.
Are you talking about By Women Built, the project that you've started?
Yes, exactly, Laura. That's what.
So tell us more about this, because on that website about By Women Built, I read that a staggering 80% of young girls don't know any single female entrepreneur. That's is that because women don't put themselves out there, or because the press talks about men only? What is the reason behind this, and how can we change this? And what's the initiative about?
Well, yes, exactly. The initiative is, I've always sort of felt very passionately about female entrepreneurship. I think women make amazing entrepreneurs, which I come to later. And I've always sort of wanted to do something in that area. And again, talk about, I've kind of written book proposals around that area. I've thought of doing apps. Nothing was quite right around female entrepreneurship, but it's always been a real passion of mine. And it was actually in the lockdown about 18 months ago that I saw a tweet from someone I know in my ecosystem. And the tweet was very simple. It was, not all of us can invest in women. Not all of us can mentor women, but we can all buy from them. And that really was the light bulb, because in the UK, because I'm in the ecosystem, I know all the women built brands we have in the UK. I know where they are, they're all over. And I know that they're women built, but the average consumer has got no idea that a lot of these products on your breakfast table, in your bathroom, in your kitchen, when you're going out for a party, what you're wearing are actually built by women. So I thought it's time to build something, a sort of kite mark, whereby we identify these as women built. And this will change somewhere this sort of psychological barrier women have to entrepreneurship, because in the UK, our rates of female entrepreneurship are 30% behind America, Canada, the Netherlands. So we've clearly got this, and that is costing our economy 250 billion. So I kind of saw this gap, and I thought actually the solution is to start, shining a light and in a way showing off these amazing brands that women have founded. And that will not only help these brands, but as encourage others it will elevate others to feel they too can do it.
I think it's a great initiative. And interesting the comment about the role models, because I think it is very important to show people that things can be done. My daughter actually did a school kind of entrepreneurship where she was the CEO of a small micro company, and that was a fantastic experience for her, because I think she suddenly saw that she could get this kind of thing done. My son hasn't yet, so I'm working on getting that. I do want to ask you one question, and we have an interesting comment from Justin, who says, talking about failure, when we were talking about the importance of being able to fail or to reframe that. This is very comforting to hear as an Asian person. Growing up, we're imbibed with the aversion to failure, very strict. Trial and error must replace this mindset. And I think this is a very valid point. I mean, it's very important to remember that our school system really punishes failure and really says, you're kind of stupid if you get bad grades, which is effectively institutionalizing the fact that you should not fail. So I think we're faced with something very difficult. So I'd like to ask you maybe something about the educational system. Should we change this earlier to get that mindset to change? And the second thing is, I mean, do you think everybody should be an entrepreneur, or is it still something that is for some people and not for everyone?
Well, I mean, the first thing I say, Justin, is, I mean, the beauty when we get older is that there's no one giving us a grade, so you can't fail, because I mean, there's no life grade, right? Like someone's giving you a report card at the end of the year. So, any friends who decide to judge us or family, they can frankly go and take themselves somewhere else for being polite about it. So no one's don't let anyone else judge you. This is your journey. And that's why my other big secret is, when you've got great ideas, when you really want to do something, I actually find you're better off keeping that dream to yourself and not really sharing that around. Because often, people tell their closest friend, people often tell their partner, could be their sort of romantic partner, and it always ends in a disaster, because, you might have that little flame inside you, but only you know about that. And to try to get someone else to validate it, I think is so the wrong journey. And for some reason, it's just human nature. We want to do something and we want someone else to immediately validate it. Yeah, you're on the right. I can promise you no one can validate it. I'm constantly being asked to mentor, or people have got a business idea and they're like, is it a good idea? And I can promise anyone with a business idea that if you had a panel of Elon Musk, Richard Branson, Mark Zuckerberg, you name it, Sheryl Sandberg, they still couldn't tell you if the idea was great, because only and that's like your gold inside that you've got to follow. So we've got to put all that aside, and this journey that we want to take is really personal, and only we really know, and we actually know all the answers, and we should have much more confidence in it and just believe in ourselves, and also not share it too much. As soon as these ideas are like kind of unborn babies, they're half baked, they're quite sort of ugly, they're you can poke a million holes in a new idea because it's completely unbaked, it's unvalidated. So the best thing to do is like protect it and not let anyone poke holes, because they're actually poking holes in what could be an absolutely incredible future for you.
Absolutely. So now let's have some recommendations for this week. So Sahar, I'm going to start with you. Obviously, we're going to recommend strongly your 2 books, Anyone Can Do It and Startup Forever, and we'll be posting the links below and in the comments. But you have a book recommendation for us?
Exactly. My book recommendation is 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing by Al Ries. And what I love about this book, and one of the best actually I've got, is this idea that called the law of focus in this book. You can see I've underlined many pieces of it. It's the biggest advice I ever give entrepreneurs is, you can't be all things to all people. You've got to know what you stand for and go very narrow to start, because you can't please everyone. And that's absolutely a golden rule.
Excellent. Leah, what's your advice, your book recommendation for the week?
My book recommendation of the week, and you see it, is this book. It's not actually this. I'm not recommending a book.
It's Tracy Emin. Amazing.
It's an artist called Tracy Emin. Of course, she's been around for many, many decades. She's a feminist artist. But I just thought not everyone knows her, especially around the world and especially here in Brussels. And I absolutely love her. She's the one who introduced me in, I want to say, the 90s to cross art, meaning I was in I forget which museum in Paris, where there was, art like this combined with video art and photography. There was one of her most famous works is with her describing the bed that she shared with many. That's her most famous work. You have to look into it. But this book is amazing. It captures many of the things she's done over the decades. And if you don't know her, you absolutely have to go see one of her exhibitions or pick up this book. So yeah, Tracy Emin is my recommendation of this week.
Sahar, you agree with that recommendation, I think?
Yeah, she's absolutely incredibly creative. So yeah, good creative fodder.
Fantastic. My recommendation for this week, actually, talking about the challenging times we're in, is a fantastic book called The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. And I mean, I think it's a great book to read when you're facing something that you think is incredibly challenging, because it helps you to turn that obstacle into an opportunity. And so it's saying, okay, when you're going through a crisis, when you're going through that thing, how can you shift the way you're looking at the situation and see what you can do from it? It's good when you're facing a major setback. So I think this is a good book to read now when you're looking at a very uncertain and challenging world, to basically see where the opportunities are in that environment. So with that, Sahar, I want to thank you so much for your really insightful tips. Also for sharing your experience in your book, in your videos, in your talks. I think it's really great to have people who are advocating for entrepreneurship. I think also to provide role models for women and young girls so that they can embark on that journey. I think it's incredibly important. So thank you so much for doing that. Thank you for being with us, and have a great weekend. Thank you.